So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to grow your wealth. I'm your host, Brett Swarts, and each episode I am joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and leadership minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration, so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He's the founder of Master Talk, a YouTube channel that he started to help the world master the art of public speaking and communication. He coaches purpose-driven entrepreneurs on how to master their message and share their ideas with the world. Please welcome to the show with me, Brenden, and I'm going to let you pronounce your last name because I'm probably not going to be able to pronounce it correctly. So, Brenden, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brett. It's great to be here.
Excellent. And how do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, it's Kumarasamy, but trust me, that there's a reason why I didn't call the YouTube channel my name, or else no one would find me.
Absolutely. Kumarasamy, but that's actually not so hard if you actually just slow down and just say it, right? Kumarasamy, that's a really cool last name. And you're out of the Montreal area in Canada, is that correct?
That's correct.
Beautiful. Well, let's start a little bit with your story and then talk a little bit about your current focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the journey started when I was 5 years old. My parents looked at me because I lived in Montreal, and they said, "You got to learn French, buddy." So they sent me to French school. And much like in the context of presentations, a lot of us are uncomfortable with those to give, presentations in the boardroom. It all starts in that school setting. I grew up presenting in a language I didn't even know. When I was in grade 1 or 2, I would look at the crowd and say bonjour, and that was my life. Parents were from middle to lower income families, so when I got into business school and university, and I was an accounting major of all things, so I guess it's pretty related to your podcast. I remember going to my first Price Waterhouse information session. I thought it was a water bottling company, how lost I was. And then, I was lucky, I was fortunate, I got an internship there. I started working there as an auditor. And then after that, I decided to switch tracks and got a job in consulting at IBM. And in that process, I did these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were playing sports, football or soccer or baseball. I used that same competitive spirit, and I competed in business competitions. And it was from that experience that when I graduated and I started working at IBM as a consultant, that I realized through a series of serendipitous events that I was one of the youngest professional speech coaches in the world. So I started coaching CEOs when I was 23, and I started a YouTube channel called Master Talk to democratize the world's information about public speaking communication in my mother's basement, and here we are today.
That's really, really fascinating and really interesting on so many levels. Before we dive into that, though, I want to take a step back, and I want the listeners, and I also want to get to know you a little bit more. I want to go back to it could be the grade school, right? It could be junior high. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts are given to us to be able to be a blessing and help to others. So maybe was that one or two gifts that you believe you were given, and how do those help how you help people today?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a discrepancy between the gifts I thought I had versus the gifts I actually did have. So for example, when I was 12, so once again, you'll appreciate this, I actually made the decision to be an accountant very thoughtfully. I looked at all of my report card grades and I noticed I had 90s in mathematics. and everything else was a 50, a 60, or a 70. So I just said, look, it's either actuarial science or it's accounting. And then I read the job description for actuaries, and let's just say I didn't want to do this in my life. So anyways, I kept going. I kept studying really hard. I thought math was really the path for me. But when I got to university, I realized what my real gift was. And there's two forms. One was to be a teacher. How do you take something that's very complex and disseminate that knowledge in a way that anybody can understand? And the second part of it was helping people with not just corporations or their businesses, but rather their lives. I wanted to be a lot more than just, somebody just working on, a day job or doing something of the sort. So I would say the biggest gifts that I've realized was definitely the one for communication. How do you convey an idea? And the second part of that is how do you convey it in a way that is so simple that even a 6-year-old can understand what you're saying. So I was able to use those gifts to make to I guess take the public speaking puzzle and make it as simple as possible on the channel.
Well, this is going to be fun because we certainly have an idea that we believe could change the world in regards to transformational exit planning, and it happens to tie into accounting, and I had no idea you had that background. All that being said, sometimes it can be a little complex, right? And folks need it to be simpler. So what is the first step to taking something that's a little more complex and making it simple?
Right. So the first exercise I like to run on the off chance that it works is the following. If you were to explain your entire idea, meeting, thought process, conversation that you have in one sentence, what would the sentence be? So if you think about me, sure, I can talk about 75 different communication tips in today's conversation, but if there's one thing that you take away from me, is that I want to convince you that you can master it. Because if I convince you that you can master communication, you'll do everything else. You'll watch the videos, you'll watch more podcasts, you'll start to read books about public speaking. But if I don't convince you, if I don't prove that it's something anybody can master, then I haven't accomplished the goal. So for everyone who's listening, depending on what conversation or what business meeting or boardroom or anything that you're doing, can you summarize that whole idea in a sentence? And if you can't do it, a good process or scenario of starting with is the following. So let's say you're the CEO of a company and it's your last presentation ever. And in that last presentation that you get to give, you get to talk for as long as you want. 5 minutes, 50 minutes, 5 hours, you get to choose the time. But unfortunately for you, nobody's going to remember your name. Nobody's going to remember your title. And heck, no one is even going to remember your content, but they're going to remember one sentence. What do you want the sentence to be? That's the first path to getting to clarity.
Okay. So is it that one big domino, that one big belief that you need someone to believe to get knocked over in a sense and say that in one sentence? And if you can knock that over or deliver that, am I on the right track here? Then the rest of it will follow. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm happy to use your business as an example. So since I have the accounting background as well, you could say, hey, we provide these services, these taxes, and these gains, and look at all the Canadian tax laws and all the US, and you can just lose pretty much everybody, including people who are accounting majors like myself, hence why I am not an accountant anymore. But if you were to summarize one sentence, what your whole business is the following. We help get rid of the headaches that you might have about accounting and make it easier for you to achieve your goals with the least amount of stress. That's it.
Beautiful.
And then from there, you can make it simpler and add more thought.
So this is ours. I'm gonna throw it at you to see what you think. We call it the one-liner, and it's behind Donald Miller's story brand. We help high net worth individuals escape feeling trapped by capital gains tax so that they can create and preserve more wealth.
That's an excellent example of how to summarize in a sentence. And you clearly spent a lot of time on that sentence. So that's the key. And I want that for everybody, right? If you can clearly articulate what you do, who you are, and who you want to be in this world, not just your business, it's going to be easy to communicate not just with your business partners and your customers, but also your family, your friends, and everyone around you.
So now I want to touch on, though, when the listener wants to make it more complex, or in our scenario, it seems like they go, well, it can't be that simple. And I go, no, you're just selling your asset to the trust, and then the funds are going in there, and you're not taking receipt of the cash. Therefore, you're in a tax deferral state. And it's this idea of like, wow, but that provides so much transformation. It's got to be too good to be true. Like, at times, I've got to hold back the features and benefits and maybe just tell them the one. So talk about that idea of not only communicating well, but slowly, I guess, allowing people to digest. Because I get so excited, you know. I want to tell them this. I want to tell them this. I want to tell them this. And sometimes it's like, whoa, that's too much. So walk through the art of delivering it in a way that's digestible.
Right. So the key is the order in which you say it is going to be different depending on what that specific person you're talking to or group of people you're talking to is prioritizing. So let's say you're speaking to a group of teenagers. The goal really is to get them to invest something, to spend a little money outside of their paycheck and to show them the power of financial freedom. Hey, kids, you know, if you start at this age, you know how much money you'll have for retirement? Imagine what you could buy with those things. But that's very different when we're talking to a 55-year-old executive at a company. You might say something like this, you know, Bob or Julia, you've spent decades of your life honing on this expertise, working on your craft, and losing most of your money to capital gains tax, to taxes you aren't aware of. But what if I told you, what if I gave you an opportunity to use that same idea, that same career, and transfer in a way that you and your family can be protected over the next decade? That's something that they prioritize. So it's always about thinking about the psychology of the person you're speaking to and emphasizing and leveraging that very psychology to make what you say more appealing to that individual.
So the emphasizing part, even when you were saying that, I was trying to glean the way in which you inflected your voice, and you talked about the history. You essentially emotionally try to connect with them from where they've been. You've spent the past decade, 20, 30, 40, blood, sweat, and tears building this, paying numerous taxes over the years. Now you're going to be selling this asset, and you're faced with 50%, 30%, 40% being gone. But can you imagine, given that kind of vision statement, right? Deferring all of that and keeping that wealth in your family, what would that do for you? What do you think? How does that sound?
You're pretty good at what you do, Brett, and I think it's great to role play this, and I completely agree. And once again, this applies for everything, even outside of business. If you want to get your kid to do something, think of it from the kid's perspective, right? What can you do for that? Right? You know, if you eat your broccoli, Dylan, I'll let you play outside for 10 more minutes. What do you think? Right? There's always a way, right? And it works. And it works for you too, because the kid exercises 10 more minutes and gets more healthier anyways. So it's always about finding that win-win incentive for both parties.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So what's the biggest misconception for entrepreneurs or consultants in sales that in today's, I guess, fast-paced, what I call attention market, right? It's no longer information market. Information is readily available anywhere you want to look. Good information is harder to find, but attention is where we're in the attention age. So what's the best kept secret right now for communicating in this attention age?
Right. Most people make the mistake of trying to speak to everyone. I got this podcast, I got this YouTube channel, but they have no clear intention behind it. So that way they can't grow a following. So, you know, if you think my YouTube channel, yeah, sure, you know, it started small, but I think the reason it's had the success it's had today is because I've really been focused on the individuals and people who I know will benefit tremendously from that content. And for me, it ends up being podcast hosts like yourself, Brett, who want to get better at communication and who also want to share that value to the audiences that they speak to. So it's a perfect fit, because if every podcast host in the world, and that's not everybody, there's only probably maybe 50, 100,000 podcast hosts in the world, maybe a bit more. Well, if everyone just listened to the YouTube channel and were fans of my free content, I would have 100,000 subscribers. That's huge. That's amazing, right? So you really don't need to speak to everyone. You really want to focus on who is the person who needs you the most. And the question you can ask yourselves to figure that out so you can make better content for those people is the following. What does the world need you most to do right now, and why? And by answering that question, it's going to be easier for you to go, well, actually, you know, I like bagels, but I'm not really that great at making them. Maybe I should make videos about something else that will be a lot more useful to people, and then getting clear on who that person is.
So what does the world need you to do right now and why? And then just like a laser, continuing to niche and focus on that particular segment. So I can't help but try, because I am the, I had 2 degrees and a minor, played college sports, and I'm the, what's the word? I want to say multitaskers. That's not really the right word for it. Like I find something I love and I go deep into that, and then but I add another thing I love and I go deep into that too. So it's kind of a thing there. But yeah, I look at our strategy. I'm like, well, it'll work for you, and yeah, and it would work for you, and because it works for primary homes, it works for businesses, it works for cryptocurrency sellers, it works for high investment real estate. It also works for the baby boomer. I think it works best for the baby boomer because they've owned something for a very long time and they have the highest. So that's definitely like, if I had to say what is my perfect avatar or who's the person I can help the most, it is that person who's in their 50s or 60s or 70s and they've built $3 to $10 million of wealth and they're ready to retire from the toilets, trash, and liability. But there's also the other ones. But what I found, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is, still focus on that one avatar. The other ones will come if it's a good fit. But if you try to be all things to all people, you're probably not going to really grow. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. And that definitely applies from a content creation perspective as well. So if you think about me, like you, I have different niches as well of people I target for my videos and content. But the big psychographic that I'm talking about is anyone who wants to share an idea that matters to someone who wants to hear it. If you're a 7-year-old girl in Cambodia, or you're a 70-year-old retiree who wants to talk about something important in life, maybe the lessons that you've learned throughout, I want Mastertalk to be the hub for all of those individuals. But at the same time, there's going to be niches in the world who are going to be a lot more interested as a group in what you have to say than as individuals. So podcast hosts is an example, technology executives and CEOs is another. And then you can gradually build on different niches until you become mainstream.
Beautiful. So that's secret number 1, trying to be everything to everyone or speaking to everyone, not good. So what's secret number 2 in this new attention age?
I would say secret number 2 is most people, especially those who are getting started out, don't have enough one-on-one long conversations that people are actually listening to them. I see so many content creators, Brett, who have 7 people watching them. And I always ask them, so out of those 7 people, how many of them have you met personally one-on-one? They always answer 1 or 2. And I was like, why isn't the answer 7? If there's no, this applies to business or anything, or even family or friends. Like if there's only 7 people who are supporting you, you need to make time to talk to all 7 people. That's the best way to understand their psychology and understand how to best serve them. Because as you serve a small group of people, the world will eventually give you permission to serve everyone else. That's what happened with Mastertalk. When I was younger and I think I started the YouTube channel at 22, nobody really took me seriously besides the people who were younger than me. Right. So let's say that people are getting started in university, want more student tips, who want to get better at presentations. And then eventually the brand increased. And now I coach people who are double, triple my age. Right. But it didn't start that way. It's about finding those groups of people who will immediately resonate with your ideas. And then eventually when you have a brand, people will just respect you for the work and the results you output. And then after that, you just scale from there.
That's beautiful. And I love the way you said that. As you serve a small amount of people, the world will give you the permission to serve more, right? And you serve, but a better way would be as you serve them really, really, really well, right? As you add an amazing amount of value, you provide that transformation for them. It's like you can't help but spread the news and grow. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely.
Amazing. This is so good. We might as well go secret number 3.
Right, sure. Secret number 2 is 3 is a bit more controversial, but it's something I live by. It's this idea that you're always a slave to your audience. If you're someone who's very, very committed to building a very successful business or even a really successful media company and following, you need to always understand that your audience always has the leverage. What do I mean by that? The best people in this space, Gary Vaynerchuk, I think, is a great example of this, who has the fastest growing marketing agency in the world, VaynerMedia. Even at this level, like he is just killing it. But even there, he still spends time after his keynotes that he gets paid $150,000 to give to still talk to the general public for 2 hours, to still sign some books, to still talk to people around him. right before he misses his flight. He still takes that time. Why does he have to bother? He's a multi-centy millionaire. He doesn't need to do any of those things. The reason he does is because to stay at the top of that game, you need to always be your audience's slave. I know that's extreme, but it's that insight that 90% of content creators don't do. Hence why there's a huge gap between the ones who really win in this game and the ones who really don't. It's like accounting. I mean, that's a great analogy. The top 1% accountants in the world get paid a lot more than the top 10%. The partners at the big four accounting firms get paid a lot more than the people who get started in accounting, right? There's a reason for that, right? It's power law. The people who are the best at what they do, the people who are the most obsessive, get paid X more in dividends, make more impact, make more influence, and create a bigger legacy for other people to follow and strive for.
Spot on. I mean, it makes perfect sense, and I can't help but think of it the sports analogy, right? The Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, the LeBron James, the Steph Currys, those who are like so committed to their craft, to the training, to the Tom Brady's, right? Going on the football ones. Even a guy like Tom Brady, it's like you look at him coming out of college. I don't know if you've seen the picture, Brenden, but he's a skinny, white guy. You're like, there's no way this guy's like playing football, like. And he goes on to his book in TB12. If you read his book, it's an amazing book. And he talks about not only the level of commitment and the obsession, right, but also the ability to be humble and get outside help with trainers and be innovative with new techniques for what's called pliability, which has changed the way I approach health and fitness. And it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have learned this when I was in high school. And you look at that, and he's become an icon, right, and arguably the greatest quarterback ever. And he's in his late, I think he's in his mid-40s now. It's crazy, right? And now they're maybe the top team right now as of this year. He just not only, and it's not just his ability, but it's his ability to lead and be a transformational type of icon. Even like LeBron. Like LeBron goes to get 2 championships. He's got championships, 2 in Miami, 1 over here in Cleveland, and then 1 in LA. 3 different teams, I guess a better way to put it. But there's something to that when you're so devoted and so in love with what you do. So is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, I'm gonna go secret number 4 because you deliver on every single one of these, and we're jamming. So is there a secret number 4? Is there more, Brenden?
There's definitely more, but I think the last thing that I would say is probably the most important, especially with content creation, is if you're not playing a decade-long game, don't bother playing at all. And the reason I say that is because building a following takes a lot of time, but yields significant dividends if you play long enough. And if you're, depending on how good you are, that journey can be a lot less than 10. So I'm probably year 2 into this, and I'm probably seeing the results that I would like to see. But for a lot of people out there, especially if there's a lot of competition, and there is in content creation, you need to play that game because it'll tell you a couple of things. One, if you're grimacing and you're cringing and you just don't want to do it for 10, you probably shouldn't do it at all. You're just wasting your time, right? But for the people like me who go, wait a second, no, nobody is democratizing the world's information on communication. Or for somebody else, it's, hey, nobody's sharing these cupcake recipes that I just need to share with people. It doesn't matter what the thing is. But if you're so passionate or rather obsessed about it that you're willing to do it for a decade, those are the people that end up winning in the end. So I highly recommend you think about the 10-year vision for your podcast, your YouTube channel, your blog. And if you don't have one, or it's too daunting for you, chances are you're going to give up before you get to the 10 years.
So well said. I can't help but think about that with the real estate investment. So before I started creating content on YouTube and having the podcast, I was a commercial real estate broker. And what we would tell owners is if you're not willing to invest for 5 to 7 or 10 years, then you probably shouldn't buy this deal. Right? If you're looking for just the quick fix and flip or the quick high returns, you might be able to do that, but this is probably not the deal for you, right? This is probably not the role for you to jump into. Let's go buy that first deal or that third or fifth deal. Let's do a 5 to 10 year hold and let's add value, and then you might be able to be good enough, and I guess another way to put it, you might be able to, the real estate investment world might give you a deal to fix and flip, on a shorter term because you've already earned it so much more on the knowledge over here, trying to connect those 2 dots on your other secret. that makes a whole lot of sense, right? And also, I think just the passion that's involved with it. I guess when I started my podcast and my YouTube channel, like I couldn't help but get the message out. Like I couldn't help but share what I had learned and the transformation I was seeing with my clients. And by the way, it was the most awkward thing getting on a camera for the first time with poor lighting and like my glasses. And it's like the yellow lights. I don't even like the white lights. And it's like, oh, this is bad. And those old videos I've deleted. My virtual assistants go on. They're like, those are the worst videos. They didn't know me. When I hired them just a couple of years ago. This is like even further back. All that being said, speak to those who are like, you know what, Brenden, that content creation is for all you millennials and those young people. Give us like if you don't do this, kind of give them the shock and awe. Like if you don't do this, like you're left behind, like you really are this time, right? Give us that feedback.
Right. So I'll tell you the one question that made me start a YouTube channel. Because to be honest, Brett, I had no intention. I know it's coming from a millennial and everything. I had no intention of being a YouTuber. That wasn't my thing. I wanted to be a partner at PwC. I wanted to be a senior executive at IBM. I was a corporate guy, clean. That's why I went to university, so I can be one of the top case compers and get a job at one of these big companies and be a senior executive in my early 30s, make a lot of money, and then die with an amazing family. I didn't want to like many of us listening, right? It's not. Even if I'm younger, I still had the same ambition until my friend came up to me one day and he asked me this question. He said, you've been doing this public speaking thing for a while, with your friends and family. Why don't you start a YouTube channel? I looked at him and I said, why would I ever do that? This is not profitable for me. I'd rather just keep working my 80-hour weeks at Price or at IBM and just get to the top. And then he said, well, do you have enough time to coach everybody on communication? What about the people in Cambodia? What about the people in India? Do you have time for that? And I said, no. And he said, exactly. Even if they paid you $1,000 an hour, you still wouldn't have enough time. Which means if you truly want to make an impact, if that's something you care about, Brenden, and if you don't, that's fine. But if that's something that you do, you need to get on video. Video is no longer an option. It becomes a necessity, it becomes an obligation, a duty, a responsibility. And then I said, okay. So I started Master Talk, not to build a business. I was not an entrepreneur by any means. I was an executive. I was a number 2 kind of guy. And then, Master Talk took off. I guess my content resonated with some people and I was able to build a practice out of it. But that wasn't the intention which I started with. So I think the only thing that matters to everyone who's listening is think about all the ideas that you have in the world. And if there's one that nobody else is sharing, understand the consequence of not sharing it. The people who need it, the people who need to hear it, the people whose lives will be changed by that idea. Every day you make the decision not to share it is a bad decision because somebody out there is not taking advantage of it.
So amazing. My mind is blown. Are you ready for the lightning round? Because we will dive into that right now.
As long as they're not counting related, I'm happy to answer them.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. So
I'm still trying to forget all of that stuff, so I didn't write my CA.
Yeah, no, it's not tax related. These are just general questions. So knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you would make sure you would do?
I would say be insane or be the same.
What do you mean by that?
Exactly. I'm happy to share. So be insane or be the same means if you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you want to make a change in the world, if you want to do something important with your life, the only way to move forward is to be insane. Don't you find it odd that at the age of 22, I started a YouTube channel in my mother's basement when I had a 6-figure job waiting for me at IBM to make videos not on comedy skits, not on vlog and pranks. That would have been normal behavior because that's what every kid does. But I did it on executive communication tips. But at the same time, I still live in my mother's basement. I karaoke in 8 different languages. I dance alone in my basement an hour a day. I don't own a car. I don't plan on moving out of my mother's basement, despite the success I've had. Why is that? Why do any of those decisions make any sense at all? And that, my friends, is the point. When all of the decisions that you make in your life make sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you'll probably become extremely successful with your life.
That's amazing. I'm ready for that book. When it's released, let me know. I'll buy it. Second question, what's the one book you've recommended or gifted the most in the past year?
Yep, absolutely. So the number one book I gift the most is Thirst by Scott Harrison. Scott's a personal hero of mine. He's the CEO of Charity Water, which is a nonprofit that helps people gain access to clean drinking water. I think he's a savant in storytelling, marketing, and branding. And if you're someone out there who wants to get better at communication, branding, messaging, he's not just a guy who talks the theory, he applies it. And he's done an incredible job with Charity Water and the brand he's built. I think he's raised like hundreds of millions of dollars since he started. Really smart guy. I highly recommend his New York Times bestseller book.
You mentioned you speak multiple languages. How does speaking multiple languages help you to communicate in English?
Oh, that's good. So the way that I think about this, and this is something I learned from karaokeing in 8 different languages actually, that I didn't do it initially for that, but it ended up being a thing later, is I speak 3, but I don't speak 8 languages. I can karaoke in 8, but I speak 3. So I speak English, French, and Tamil. So what this does is when you learn to pronounce words you don't understand, a language you can't speak, it improves your overall pronunciation for everything or anything that you say. Donc, quand je parle français, notice how when I switch to French, there's no accent, right? Like 0. So you don't see it. Even obviously, maybe people don't understand French, it's totally fine. But I can do that in Korean and Japanese. So when doing that in different languages, it improves your pronunciation in the English language and every other language that you speak. So and it's a fun way to practice pronunciation, by the way, because you don't want to wake up every day and just go, I like apples, I like oranges. You'll just give up after a couple of days. So that's why I recommend singing songs in just languages or just songs you like in languages you don't understand.
That's so beautiful, and I can't help but think about the body, right? And when you work out in certain ways, let's say you just do like heavy lifting and you're just bench pressing, but when you like bands or you do like balance training, you're getting the inner muscles. So I can't help but think the inflection of your voice and your tone when you're going into these different languages, it's almost taking your tongue, let's say, outside of its comfort zone. Therefore, you're strengthening it in ways in which you maybe had never used before. Therefore, it's making it overall stronger. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really fascinating. Cool. Next question. Give me a mobile or digital resource you recommend for your business.
Ooh, mobile digital resource. I don't think people take enough notes on their thought process in their day-to-day. So I would probably recommend Google Keep, or if you have an iPhone, iNotes. And the reason I say this is because let's say somebody's listening to this podcast right now. They might be doing this in a car or while they're working out. But I think what most people are missing is not the information, but rather the reflection of that information. So when I listen to a podcast, or let's say I'm on a strategy call with you, or I'm talking to different people, I'm always taking notes specifically about things that I think are brand new insights that not many people have said. So I can bank that somewhere, whether it's a future video idea or a discussion I want to have with somebody. So for example, here's something I came up with a week ago. Often what I found is that the questions that we're interested in answering that most people aren't interested in knowing more about are the ones we should be following. So for example, one of the questions I ask myself that nobody asks themselves is, what is the world's easiest problem to solve? So that led me down a whole different rabbit hole of ideas and thoughts. So for you, what is the question that you're interested in answering that you think most people aren't interested in? And those are the ones you follow. Anyways, those are just some weird insights that come up with as I read and reflect on different things. But you want to write that down somewhere. That's not just if you want to be a thought leader. That's just anything, business tricks. Somebody gives you a strategy like, hey, Brett, did you try this with your business? You're like, oh, whoa, I got to take a note on that. Always keep that log going.
Beautiful. Love that. Give me your favorite leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by.
Right. I'll use one of Scott's quotes. And Scott's quote is probably the one that's marked my life the most besides the whole insane thing, which is the following. The goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will. So from that quote, what I learned personally is life was about legacy. And I'm glad I learned that very early on in life, so I didn't have to waste my time chasing things that were ultimately useless in the grand scheme of things. So really focusing on making a legacy and doing something that actually matters to people who need it the most.
Beautiful. Love that. Next question. What are you curious about right now?
Lots of things. I'm curious about everything. Life, the way that why did you unbutton one shirt and not two, or why did you unbutton shirts at all? Why do you have that logo? I'm always asking questions all the time. So I think one way of summarizing my thoughts there is the quality of your life is solely determined by the quality of the questions you're willing to ask yourself. That's why my habit that I recommend people is ask yourself a hard question about life every day. What are you pretending not to know? If you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? And if you died tomorrow, what would your funeral speech say about you? It leads to a lot of clarity.
It's beautiful. I love it. Brothers or sisters growing up? Curious. What was the household like?
Yep. Father, mother, and younger sister.
Cool. What's your sister doing?
She's an English teacher.
That's cool. Did she get training from you? Did she send her students to your YouTube channel?
You know, if there's something I've learned in my journey is don't enforce change onto people who don't necessarily want it right now. But my sister's amazing, though. She's not as crazy as I am, and that's great. Trust me.
It's beautiful. No, I love it. I love it. It's the last question here, Brenden, and it's my favorite question because it helps to encapsulate a little bit of what we've talked about so far and in your journey, in your story, and your successes. So after all your successes and all the things you've overcome, I'm curious, how do you stay centered in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach for new goals?
That's an interesting double-parted question there. I would say the big thing, the underlying thread, is I'm very aware of my own mortality. Right? I always like using comparison as a tool. So what do I mean by this? Most people compare the wrong things, Brett. They go, oh, this person has a BMW. I should probably get one. Oh, this person has this. But they don't make that list for what brings them joy. And for me, what I've learned through the series of questions I've asked myself is the only thing I care about is to do great things. I don't really care if I have to live in a basement, despite the fact that I'm financially successful. I just want to do great things to keep my burn rate low. So from that insight, I'm always comparing myself to people who are way ahead of me and thinking, how can I circumvent that success in half the time, in 75% of the time, or, in that range. And the other part of that is, once again, going back to mortality. If I know the game is going to be over in 50 years, it gives me that push, that incentive to go, you might as well play it to the fullest, because you don't know if that is 50 years, 25 years, or even 5 years.
That's beautiful. And that makes sense. I had one of my kind of virtual mentors, if you will. He's a fellow podcaster. He runs the #1 real estate podcast called the Best Ever Real Estate Podcast, Joe Fairless. He has a death clock.
Oh, I love death clocks. Yeah.
And he has it there, and it's literally that. It basically takes what his age is, what's the average, this. You can add a little bit, minus a little bit, whatever you want to do, and it's there. And every day he's looking at it going, okay, this is reminding me that I've only got so much time in this life and opportunity, and we're not promised it, but at least it helps him to keep in touch with his mortality. I think that is wise, and I think that's smart to number our days and to live life to the fullest. With that, any good thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, just because you mentioned that, I'm happy to add this as a final value add, since people are still listening, for those of you who are.
Yeah.
I actually have a more extreme version of the death clock. I call it the admirer timer. So essentially what you do is pick someone that you really admire in life that died at a very young age and assume you're going to die at that age. So for me, to be personal here, the person I chose is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was supposed to do a lot of amazing things with his life. He was just starting. He was in the first inning, really, after his basketball career was over, essentially. But nope, not many people knew that. He was going to start this huge media company and just make a dent that was much more significant than all of his years in basketball. Unfortunately, he passed. So the way that I think about life is the reason this is more effective than a death clock is because you personally admire the individual. That person you admired made the same mistake that they don't want you to make, which was they thought they were going to live until the average life expectancy, in the same way your friend thinks. They think they're going to live until 80 or 70. Oh yeah, I'm eating all my avocados, I'm going to make it. But the admirer timer is an extreme version of that, because it reminds you that the person that you admire personally died at half the time, so assume you're going to die at that point. And then if you get to that age, hopefully, you can pick somebody else and continue that exercise until it's your turn to go.
I think that's beautiful, and you might want to copyright. You might want to copyright that book, right? And get that on there. TheAdmirerTimer.com. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Any last thoughts for our listeners, and then also remind them where they can find you.
Yeah, of course. No, I think if there's one thing I'd love to leave people with, is the following. If you have an idea worth sharing, it doesn't need to be a YouTube channel. It doesn't need to be a podcast. All it needs to be is an idea that somebody else cares about. And spoiler alert, we all have them within us. It could be one gesture that we make to the person in our family. It could be that recipe that 7 people have been asking you for that you're just too nervous or worried about to write as a blog. If you have that idea, the only encouragement I have left to give is share it. Because what else do you have to lose? If you know one person needs it and everyone did that, then life would be better.
Beautiful. And where can they find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to check out the YouTube channel, that's Master Talk in one word. And if you want to message me directly on Instagram, if you want to get in touch, the handle is Master Your Talk. I don't know. I just kind of got a little bump there. But yeah, you can message me if you have any questions.
Brenden, Kumarasamy, oh my gosh, amazing. My mind is blown, and I'm going to subscribe. And I'm so thrilled and so honored to have you on the show. I really feel better for it. And I want to encourage you to keep using the gift talents you've been given to make a difference in this world and help people to grow and to lead and to communicate. Admire a timer. I got to pick somebody, man. I got to pick somebody now. And I thank you for being on the show. And with that, I also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust and or building your online presence, building your content, right? Building your communication skills is the best way for you to grow your wealth, because that's going to help you grow your business and make a bigger impact in this world. So with that, if you have anything you're selling, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and clarify your capital gains tax deferral options. Thank you so much for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe. We so appreciate everyone out there listening, and goodbye.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.